Tshuva is actually the millennia-old Jewish version of growth mindset.
We were taught to love America, but you're right, we weren't taught to love ourselves in America. The reason the Torah starts not with Exodus, with Shemot, and with Bereshit is because we are part of the story of humankind.
Rosh HaShanah summons us to greatness. This is the conclusion of Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks in his famous essay about the holiday, which you can read in the opening of the Koren Siddur, and also in his book titled Ceremony and Celebration. I am intrigued by such ideas of Rabbi Sacks because they frame deeply religious events in accessible, non-religious notions. It takes a deep faith to believe that our world was created within 6 days and that humanity was forged on Aleph Tishrei exactly 5,786 years ago. But it doesn't require faith at all to appreciate the deeply spiritual and ethical aspects of Rosh HaShanah that imply that all human beings have basic human rights because we were all created in the image of God, and that every person could use a bit of soul-searching every year. That period of soul-searching offers the opportunity for greatness. For some, this period lasts for 7 weeks, from the beginning of the month of Elul until the end of Sukkoth. For others, it may last just 1 day, on Yom Kippur. Either way, this is the millennia-old Jewish version of growth mindset that emanates from brutally honest introspection and courage to shape one's future by changing course. Such powerful framings play a crucial role in expanding the circles of people who can find meaning in the holidays. In Israel, Rosh HaShanah and Yom Kippur are imminently felt in the public space. But in the diaspora, where the public space is wholly secular, these additional dimensions of meaning of the holidays increase the touchpoints between our tradition and members of our community. I often refer to myself as a secular in Shul. On the one hand, I'm not a religious person. On the other hand, I love going to synagogue, and our family is a member not in one but 2 Orthodox shuls in Manhattan, Lincoln Square Synagogue and West Side Sephardic Synagogue. So for me, such insights about Judaism that transcend its religiosity are vitally important because they help me understand, appreciate, enjoy my time in synagogue, and have a deeper connection to my community and people. To discuss these big ideas of Rosh HaShanah and Yom Kippur, I'm honored to have Tikvah Weiner with me today. Tikvah is the founder and head of Kadima Coaching, which provides professional development in student-centered learning to Jewish schools. Tikvah, welcome. Let's dive in. So Tikvah, thank you very much for joining me. And it's really a pleasure to have you here before Rosh Hashanah. You created Kadima Coaching. So let's start with that, your story, and then we'll dive into the Rosh Hashanah themes that we're here to discuss.
Okay. First of all, thank you for having me, Giddy. It's wonderful to be here. So I am CEO of Kadima Coaching, which provides professional development to Jewish schools all over the world in student-centered learning, which I've been really pursuing for the last 10 years. It really actually started when I noticed all the technology coming into the classroom at the same time that I noticed the modifications list of what students need getting longer and longer. And I said to myself, well, maybe what we're doing is not the right thing as opposed to the kids not being right for the class. And as you can imagine, when tech came in, they didn't really have to be in class anymore. So you can, right? And here we are today, and everyone's banning cell phones and rethinking how they use computers. And so the approach in student-centered learning is how do we really give agency to students in their learning, and how do we do that in small and big ways? So it can be anything from, giving students choice in a discussion prompt to doing project-based learning where the students are making things both for themselves and in the real world and impacting the real world in significant ways.
So it's actually, they make things. So can you give us an example?
Sure. I had a project.
Maybe related to Rosh Hashanah.
Well, how about related to Rabbi Sachs?
All right, let's do
Okay.
that.
So
So I should say here that we are big fans of Rabbi Sachs, which is how we met.
yes.
And I mean, we'll speak more about Rabbi Sachs, but just as an introduction of why you're diving into the Rabbi Sachs connection here.
Exactly. And it's just a testament, despite the great loss, of this great man, especially during these times, we all feel it. But it's a testament to how quickly it binds people together. Oh, I'm a Rabbi Sachs fan. So am I. I still haven't met anyone who isn't. So I had a project-based learning high school, the Idea School, from 2018 to 2023. And when Rabbi Sachs passed away, my Judaic Studies principal, Tavi Kozlo, decided to honor his memory with a project around his writings, and all the students in, I believe it was the 10th and 11th grade at that time, read A Letter in the Scroll, and for a semester not only looked at all the sources in the text, right, but then investigated and interrogated what Judaism meant to them, what is their why, in terms of their Jewish practice and learning and everything, no matter what level you were on in terms of either your comfortability, your comfort with text, or your practice, you could enter into that conversation. And it included the community interviewing parents, other family members, community members. What did their Judaism mean to them? We created a website, which is still up today, the Rabbi Sachs Memorial Project. To kick off the project, Gila Sachs spoke to our students, which was it was over Zoom, and it was a really impactful conversation talking about her father. And the students had to create, whether it was source sheets or guides to reading Letter in the Scroll, and they also had to come up with other projects they wanted to do around the book. And if you asked a student about that project, it was probably one of the most impactful, because it really was about, like, who am I as a Jew?
So we are here to discuss Rosh HaShanah. And one of the biggest things, so Rabbi Sachs wrote these fabulous 5 essays about the big festivals of Judaism.
Yes.
And when he writes about Rosh Hashanah, he speaks about a holiday that summons us to greatness. And he also says that the process of tshuva, beginning with the Slichot and then going with the days of Oy, Yamim HaNoraim, and all of that is actually the millennia-old Jewish version of growth mindset. And I think that there is no better person than you to actually speak about the connection between the process that we go through in the holidays and the growth mindset.
Yes, and one of the most, I think, things about project-based learning that resonated with me is that it seemed very Jewish, because there was this very authentic piece to it, and that's really what we do in Judaism, right? If you think about, let's say, the Pesach Seder, which is the thing that most Jews and even non-Jews around the world celebrate, well, it's everything. It's a completely experiential, right, holiday. Every kind of learner is involved, and it harkens back to an ancient story that we tell, and it applies to all humans, right, not just even Jews. In the high holidays, what's really incredible about it is that it does, right, we did tap into this idea that every year we have the ability to start anew. It is very different from concepts, and I'm not here to, it's not about denigrating other religions, but it's a very sharp contrast between, let's say, the concept of original sin, where you are born with with a flaw that you have to get rid of. And Judaism recognizes that we are flawed, but as Rabbi Sachs says, that's not the surprise in Bereshit, right? In Genesis, God is not surprised that man sins, humankind sins. God wants humankind to take responsibility for that sin.
And one of the most actually incredible insights that he says that the logical conclusion is that God must have created repentance before he created humans, because otherwise he cannot explain the human existence.
Yes, that here's this creature, right? It's God. Humans aren't meant to be perfect, so here's this opportunity to perfect ourselves, and we're never going to get that there, right? It's an asymptote. I think what draws me again and again to Rabbi Sachs is his concept of hope, right? Which is also my name, so it's also deeply personal for me. But the sense that he makes a distinction between hope and optimism, where optimism is a passive state of mind and hope is something you do. And in the Yamim Noraim, at the high holidays, that's what we do. We are hopeful that we can change, and we articulate over and over again that we will, even knowing that we won't. And
Right.
I think the other thing that is really important about what he does around Rosh HaShanah is that Rosh HaShanah is the birthday of the world, right? And this is where Rabbi Sachs's vision is not ecumenical and parochial, or is ecumenical. It's not parochial, but it is. We start with that God created the universe, and that God created the world, and that every human being deserves dignity and respect, and every human being has the ability to change. So it's a radically positive view, right, of what humankind is capable
Right,
of.
which you mentioned earlier about the connection between past and future. So there are a lot of cultures out there that say that your past determines your future. If you're born in a certain place in society, this is where you will stay. If you're born a slave, you'll stay a slave. You're born no royalty, you'll stay royalty. But Judaism actually says that your future determines your past, which means whatever you do to change course actually redefines the experiences that you've had, which is really a radical idea with massive political implications that we'll speak about in a moment. But, part of what I'm trying to do here is to take God out of the equation. So, as I said in the introductory word, it takes a lot of faith to believe the world was created in 6 days. But it doesn't take a lot of faith to appreciate the notion that if everybody was created in the image of God, we all have the basic rights, right? We all have these kind of characteristics that are shared across religions, cultures, genders, and so on. And that is, I think, so central to the idea of Rosh HaShanah, because it's as Rabbi Sachs says, it's the most universal holiday of all Jewish holidays. So, that's fascinating how you see it.
Yes, I think that, and again, this is what draws me to Rabbi Sachs over and over again, is that he was a particularist while also being a universalist, and neither one compromised the other. So he was obviously deeply rooted in his Judaism, but totally open to the outside world. I think
And the way he infuses kind of outside knowledge, yes, sociology, psychology, leadership, anthropology, history, into the understanding of our particular story is just, of course, remarkable.
It's remarkable. It's mind-boggling, right? We spoke earlier about his productivity, right? So it is. It's quite impressive. I think he was. Truly, obviously, he was a Renaissance man. Joanna Benarosh, the president of the Rabbi Sachs Legacy, has told us a story about when he was doing his TED Talk, and he was so curious, just running around the place, just like, did you hear this person and that person, and just his curiosity. It was like a childlike wonder at what the world could create and bring, and that's the universalism. It's the sense that no matter what lens you have in the world, you can make it a better place. And he believed that deeply about every single person. That authenticity comes through in all his works.
Yeah, so the other thing he speaks about, I think is very relevant for our conversation, is he speaks about how Judaism had the wisdom of anchoring these events, evolution, personal evolution, national evolution, in the calendar, in an annual cycle. First of all, for sure, for educators, it's a boon, right?
It follows the academic year, so it's perfect.
Except Tisha B'Av.
Yes.
And that requires a conversation. Because I think that's why Tisha B'Av is the most neglected, important day on the Jewish calendar, because it falls in America, but it falls during the camps. So maybe in the camp they appreciate. Mm-hmm. But in Israel, it's just in the summer holiday.
Nobody does.
But let's just speak about the way the potential or the beauty of anchoring all these big spiritual, personal evolution events, national evolution events in the calendar, and what it allows for us as members of the community.
I think it's important to obviously to have things in a calendar. It's the first thing when you're doing any project, right? What's my due date here? when do I have to have the deliverables by? Right. And so knowing that each year this time is coming and we blow the shofar, we're getting ready for this moment.
And we say these strange sentences like just about Rosh HaShanah, we say, today, 5,786 years ago, the world was created. It's like such a strange notion, but we say it.
Yeah.
Or now Moses went on Mount Sinai. Now Moses came down from Mount Sinai. It allows us to relive all these mythological stories, mythologies, our mythologies.
Yes. And in that sense, it's very much like project-based learning, which is I'm asking you to actually put yourself in the experience in a full-bodied way. And that's what Judaism asks of us constantly, right? Right? We have to view ourselves as if we left Egypt. That's a crazy notion. It's so far, it's so long ago, but you're right. What our religion demands of us is that, no, you've got to count. What you're doing matters, right? You've got to count every step of the way, and measure, right? And in Hilchot Tshuva, in the laws of repentance, Maimonides talks about the fact that each one of our deeds can tip the world into merit or sin. And as a child, that absolutely freaked me out. But that is actually at the heart of what Rabbi Sachs is saying, is that you matter. What you do matters. And if you're talking about universal applications and the way that we are in the world today, right, I think that there can be really no greater lesson. Governor Cox, we're sitting here after Charlie Kirk's assassination, he said, the conflict entrepreneurs who unleashed social media and tech on us. And we know there's this dopamine hit when we're using the social media, and that anger is just as much as a rush as any drug. He said each one of us, right, we didn't get here alone, and each one of us is going to have to get out of this alone. So there are, you're talking about what are the real life implications, is it. We have to, each one of us, right, take responsibility.
Yeah, so basically I think that actually funnels us to another aspect that I would love to discuss with you, and obviously we can take it anywhere we want. So there are tremendous political implications to this idea that everybody was created in the image of God. When I say political, I don't mean party politics or anything. I'm just talking about the way society is structured. So, if we're all created in the image of God, there's and we can all change course. It means there's full mobility in society. And that was a radical political idea 3,500 years ago, 4,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. There was the Greek culture. In Egypt, they believed that the Pharaoh is the demigod. And there comes Moses. He's an elderly guy, 80 years old. He's disabled. And he says to Pharaoh, no, you're not. You're just like me. So the political implications of this are massive.
Yes.
And I think that when we go into Shul, right, we go into synagogue, and we in Rosh HaShanah, and we think about the universality of the message, we're actually thinking about it's actually the origin of human rights is celebrated in that holiday.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I think that and Rabbi Sachs, many people have talked about this. I mean, the biblical origins of human rights, this notion of a Shabbat, a Sabbath, where even your water drawer, nobody cared about the water drawer in the ancient world, right? Even in Greece, even Athenian, right, classical Greek democracy, women were not allowed to leave the house. There were slaves, right? Foreigners didn't have voting rights. So this notion that everybody warranted a day of rest is a radical notion.
Of course,
right.
and that actually separates the slave from the free person. The Shabbat, the ability to actually distinguish between the mundane and the holy actually, the substantive, even if you don't want to call it holy, the substantive actually gives meaning to the 6 days of work. These are all really, incredible ideas. But I think that what's interesting here is the string of holidays also. The fact that you have Rosh HaShanah as a universal holiday, Yom Kippur as a personal holiday, and then Sukkoth as a national holiday, and that kind of triangle, and how these themes cut through the holidays. So, one of the things Rabbi Sachs speaks about is the tshuva, the process of tshuva, meaning the process of contemplation, introspection, changing course, is not just personal, it's also national. And that's an even more radical idea, that a group of people can do that and not just individual. And I find this fascinating because, people, nations do change.
Yes, and to your point about the word political, right? You were using it more, I suppose, in the Aristotelian way. We are political animals. Man is a social animal, right? And we're meant to be with other people. It's literally, right? In our DNA, right? We've evolved to need other people. So and every religion, right? There's a huge social component. There's a communal component. And I think one of the things that Rabbi Sachs loved about America was that, like Judaism, it was a very future-oriented society. It wasn't based on this national past that's kind of glorious and over, but about the future and what we can create together, right? The home we build together, to put it in Saxian words.
And also, obviously, that comes after 26 centuries, perhaps more or less, but anyhow, 20-something centuries of diaspora Jewish life, where Jews have been self-organizing, self-funding, and that actually totally overlaps with the ethos of America.
Yes.
And which is why I think that there was a natural fit between Jews in America. It is no coincidence that this is the greatest diaspora, one of, if not the most remarkable diaspora in Jewish history, is that societal fit between the two, between American society and Jewish society.
Well, the American the sacred texts of America are so rooted in the Bible, even though it's supposedly not a biblical or religious country, but obviously there's a very strong Christian ethos there that is from the Bible, the Hebrew Bible. And then I think all the skills we learned as an exiled people really kind of hit this perfect, this perfect moment of, here's this place that's rooted in a lot of the same things that we value. And of course, as through our history, we've just adapted. We're like, we'll take that from the existing culture. We'll take that. And here it's just been, it's been a match made in heaven in many ways.
So this actually connects to another topic that we spoke about, when we first met a few weeks ago. And that is about Jewish education in Jewish schools, day schools, and their ability to actually nurture proud American Jews, right? So in Jewish schools, we learn a lot about Jewish history, Poland, Holocaust, etc. Mm-hmm. The kids learn about Israel. But the legacy of American Jewry, right? So I know it's a little bit off topic, but I do want to ask you about the challenge of raising kids who are proud American Jews. They're proud of this community, the legacy of what Jews have done in America, etc. I know it's kind of off topic, but maybe you could say a few words about that.
Yeah. And I think Rabbi Sachs would have appreciated that too. The idea that you should be proud of who you are. I mean, when I was growing up, we were proud of I was proud of our American story. We may have been ashamed of certain parts of it, and we're still ashamed. But again, it's that, what are your sacred texts? What are you going back to? And let me check, am I still going in the right direction? Kind of like the high holidays. Yes. I may not be fulfilling everything written in this Torah document, but let me go back and check and see where I'm deficient and then move forward. So it is actually quite similar.
And in democracy, it's actually structured. This is the beauty of democracy, which is in America, every 2 years there is election, and there's checks and balances between the different institutions. But it's true about every democracy, that there is kind of a self-correcting mechanism over time that assembles the inputs of the entire population into the division of power. But I think that in America there is also something else, and that is that because of the separation between religion and state here, the Jewish community was actually allowed to be all that it can be in this society. Meaning there was never this kind of intervention and suppression of, there was never this intervention of the government in the state, of the government in the religious institutions of our community. So some of the greatest innovations in Jewish life came from America, including modern Orthodoxy in some ways, and obviously reform and reconstruction. All these innovations are coming from here.
Right. Well, I think they had some also European roots. We have to give credit where credit is due. But I think, and I've thought about it a lot. I've thought about this a lot post-October 7th, because I've been in certain convenings where it really has sparked thinking around this. Because to your point before about our educational system, we were taught to love America, but you're right, we weren't taught to love ourselves in America. We weren't taught the Jewish American story. If there was anything we were taught to love about ourselves, it was our Judaism and it was Israel. So there's this actual bifurcation going on between the homeland our Jewish homeland and the land we are actually in. And post October 7th, what some of the convenings I've been in have sparked, have pushed me to think about is the fact that I did feel like a minority in a Christian majority country, and that we kind of maybe did tzimtzum. We, retreated from the mainstream in certain ways because we knew that culture wasn't really ours. And I think post October 7th, I felt, no, actually, you know what? We are the American story too.
Of course.
And right. And I don't think, I think you and as Israeli can jump in and say, of course, because in Israel, you are the story.
But
yeah.
We're now in the middle of America's 250th
yes.
year, heading to America's 250th anniversary. The overarching theme of all these semi-centennial celebrations, America's 50th, America's centennial, 150, bicentennial, 1976, now has been the American Revolution, and so on. And so when we speak about American Revolution, it's such an invitation for us to speak about our place in the American Revolution. And we have made huge contributions as a community and also as an assembly of individuals to America. And I think this is actually post-October 7, October 8, and since the 1990s, all Jews in the world that are outside of Israel are diaspora by choice. And there's sort of a reluctance to acknowledge that. Jews are here by choice. Anybody who wants to go to Israel can go to Israel. But if you're staying here, you got to love it.
What's frustrated me in the conversations post-October 7th between Israeli Jews and diaspora Jews and everyone commenting around it is that I haven't heard enough conversations about the way we need each other and the way we should nurture each other, and the ways I heard Nadav Ayal speak very beautifully about this, about Israelis being not understanding in a way what it means to hide your identity. Right, Israelis don't have to do that. They are the majority. It does do something. You walk around differently when you're the majority, culture, religion. And I think Israelis do need to appreciate that Jews in the diaspora don't do that, even American Jews who have been until October 7th very, very comfortable in this country. And I think, obviously, American Jews in many of our settings do learn to appreciate Israel, but don't really understand Israeli culture. And it takes a while. And I wish that we could have more dialogue around not just how we're different, but also how there's a lot of talk about Jewish peoplehood. Well, what does that really mean? And how do we act as one body? We may not agree. That still doesn't mean we're going to agree. But how do we act in ways that help each other and complement each other? Because I think that's really an untapped source of potential for us as a people.
Well, you just opened many topics, but I do want to go back right now to the theme that cuts across these big holidays, which is for Rosh HaShanah and universality. So we're all created in the image of God. Comes Sukkoth, that really reminds us of the fragility of our life, that we may live in a very, again, project-based learning. You may live in a very nice home, but in Sukkot, you're in the Sukkah, and the Sukkah is, and the Sukkah is so simple and so frugal. And that connects to what happens on Yom Kippur. And we say on Yom Kippur, we're being sort of, the verdict comes, and who by fire, who by water. We used to think it's crazy ideas, but then comes October 7th, come all these events,
right.
and poof, it could happen.
Right.
So my point is, so first of all, there is a resilience element here, that you have to be reminded that everything could happen. But I just want to speak about the compassion element.
Okay.
Right? That goes from, we are all created in the image of God. So there's basic human rights on one hand, and then we have to remember the poor. That's Sukkot. So my question is this ideal of compassion, and how do you think it plays out? What's the relevance of it today in our community, our society, and in America?
There's a lot there to unpack. So there are a couple of things, which is, as you're talking, I'm thinking also there's this duality to Judaism, which is at the one time it's extremely positive, hopeful, optimistic, all the things. And at the same time, it's very realistic and perhaps very dark, because we go from the birthday of the world, but you're being judged. Then we go to Yom Kippur. It's the holiest of holidays, but we suffer, right? We have to do things that cause us to suffer on that day. And then we go to Sukkot, where we are in biblical times, right? It was an aliyah l'regel. It was a pilgrimage to the temple. It was the Simchat Beit HaShoeva, the water celebration. And it was this very communal, joyful, right, celebration together, this national, like what you said, this national coming together. And at the same time, we're in this hut reminding us that it's all temporary, right? And even today, we celebrate Simchat Torah, where we celebrate finishing reading the Torah, but we also read Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, so that we're constantly being reminded of this dichotomy. And I think, in October 7th, it's like, oh, the shock of it, but also, am I shocked? Jewish history just came calling, right? And that's the part of Jewish education. Are we prepared? Not in a dark way, but know where you come from. In terms of what you're saying about this like communal, I think it's an opportunity also, and compassion. I think at all times we're being reminded, what are we doing here, right? Whether we're being reminded of that as a Jew, as a human, as a community, as a person who's in the Jewish community, but also who lives in the world. So at all times, that's, I think, why it's so multifaceted, because it's complex, and Judaism asks for complex and nuanced things of its practitioners.
Yes, and Rabbi, also in this context, one of my favorite quotes from Rabbi Sachs is that society is being judged by how it takes care of the vulnerable population. So basically, Judaism is and this is the number one brand, overarching theme from the Torah to today, through the prophets, through all of our founding narratives and stories, is that we are judged by how we treat the vulnerable members of our community, of society, Jews and non-Jews. So it's a huge theme for us. But I think it's a very, I can't always put it in words, exact words. I feel like it's very relevant now, because society is being so polarized.
Yes.
And the gaps are just growing. And we have, as a community, we have something special to bring to the table now, 21st century, when it comes to dealing with these societal crises. And the whole idea of compassion, I think, comes from our past, but is also part of our future.
Absolutely.
And it's not just, within our community doing tzedakah here and there. It's like a bigger notion of what should be society and the economy now.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. My go-to book of Rabbi Sachs is To Heal a Fractured World. It's the project-based learning book, right? What is your purpose here? Go learn, But if your Torah is not connected to what you're doing in the world, then what good is your learning, right? And that book, I think, lays it out in such beautiful ways as only Rabbi Sachs can. I think today, Rabbi Sachs also talks about, look, the common good, which is obviously an American term, but or really a democracy term, social contract term. But we've lost that, haven't we? And the polarization of the last really 30 years has just gotten worse and worse until we've gone very tribal. And I think there are tribal aspects to the Torah, but it was from a time that was tribal. And I think we have to say to ourselves, what society are we living in now, right, where these aspects of, as you said, where our aspects of Judaism can enhance and enrich the societies that we're in.
So my perspective is that for millennia, Jewish leadership in humanity, we never led humanity, but we had leadership position in humanity, was qualitative. So, we introduced new ideals, new laws, different institutions. So it was qualitative, and it kind of radiated around the world. It was embraced by other cultures and religions, monotheistic religions and others maybe as well. So there's that element. But in the last few decades, when I say decades, 20, 30 years, for the first time in Jewish history, we're in a position to change the world quantitatively, because of the power of technology, because of the innovations happening in Israel, because of the fact that you have a worldwide web of Jewish communities that are like a distribution network. And then we have all these ideals of people, tikkun olam, want to do good. So you have these four elements, the attitude, the technology, the communities, and the innovation coming out of Israel. And we can actually improve the lives of hundreds of millions of people. I think it's a new era in Jewish history in terms of what we can do. But I also believe that in many places we have forgotten that, because we've done very well. We are very comfortable. So it was kind of it's kind of almost natural to let go of these instincts of being really focused on the bottom of the economic ladder and being very creative in how we deal with them.
Yes, how do we harness our creative and moral powers to meet this moment? I was just at a conference this week with 1840 and the American Security Foundation, which the ASF thinks about AI in ethical ways. So it's all about how do we look at AI through a Jewish lens. And my big takeaway was, yes, faith communities, the Jewish community has a responsibility to lead this conversation, because we have always been talking about humankind in moral, ethical, and deeply moral and ethical ways. We're so in the weeds sometimes, right? Of how do we treat people? How do we talk about people, right? How has every school not completely revamped the way it teaches Lashon Hara, gossip, the laws of gossip in the age of social media and AI? What are we doing right now to meet this moment? And you're right. There were people there who were very pessimistic about AI, and I tend not to be on the pessimistic side. And I realize the dangers, but I want to be in the camp, right? Because I am an acolyte of Rabbi Sachs of, yes, what do we do, right? What hope can we enact in the world that, as you said, really harness the potential of our people to quantitatively change the world?
I believe that the polarization in our society, in American society, around the world, is an existential threat to the Jewish community. Yes. And it came up in when we met July 21. Michal Biton spoke about it. Mm-hmm. Moderation is our national security interest, yes, to the extent that we could speak about national security by the Jewish people. But we need a moderate society. We need a society where people are civil to each other, civic-minded. And I think that part of our way of pushing moderation in society is the tool of compassion, yes, which we're being taught over and over again, especially in these holidays. One
of the topics that comes up with AI is, well, what are what are kids going to do, right, if everything is on AI? And of course, these are conversations that happened when Google, right, came to the forefront. And it might have been conversations that people made when books opened. What are the kids going to learn now? But I think that one of the things that we have to now teach students much more deliberately and intentionally is, how do you talk to somebody else? How do you be open and curious and wonder about what the other person is thinking? And it's very easy, John, obviously everyone's read, hopefully not everyone, but hopefully everyone goes out and reads the Anxious Generation Heights book, because when you're having an embodied experience with someone, it's much harder to hate on them. It's very easy to lob a hateful remark and then leave a forum, right? But when you're having a conversation where the goal is to exchange ideas, not to debate them, but to exchange them, it's much different. So yes, the compassion has to be at the root of that.
So we're coming to the end of our time, and it's been like an admiration fest for Rabbi Sachs, but I do want to throw in another Rabbi Sachs insight that I think is super relevant.
Bring it.
Which is, he says, and I love quoting him on that, he says, the best way to heal a broken society is to build things together.
Yes.
This was his commentary on, I think it was V'Hel.
I don't remember.
No, Ba'alotcha.
Okay.
And you have brought project-based learning into education. So maybe you could speak about that, and we could close with something that
Yes,
inspiring.
I love that. You really set me up well there. Thank you. Yes, we have to build things together. That's part of what made me think about project-based learning as a very Jewish thing. He talks about the home we build together, right? He says that the society shouldn't be like the English country manor house where you invite people in, but you're the host and you have some sort of superior claim on the place, or a hotel where people just pay their money and go to their rooms, and as long as the garbage isn't messy in the common area, we're okay. But I know this is PBL, project-based learning. If we build the home together, I know what you're good at. I'm going to come help you with what I'm good at. When we build something, we talk to each other, right? We need each other, right? You step on the ladder, I'll hold the ladder, right? These are very profound experiences, even if they're not. They don't feel important. They are very important. Ask anyone who's been to camp and who's run camp, right, experiences, that these are the things that build community. And yes, we have to get back to that. And since October 7th and this backlash of anti-Semitism, I've really tried to focus on the local, because those are the places where I can see another person. We can build something together.
This is not just within community, it's also among communities.
Yes.
And especially in America, I believe that the long-term security of Jewish communities all over the world, but also particularly in the United States, depends on the community relations we create.
Yes.
I happen to volunteer on the security team of the synagogue. Those security teams, this is the last line of, of defense, so to speak. Way before that, there is the police, there is the fire department, there is, law enforcement. There's all these mechanisms that are out there to allow us to, freedom of religion, freedom of association. So these community relations are crucially important.
Yes.
And our ability to work also among communities and not just within communities is crucially important.
Agreed. We have to, and that's where the teaching of listening and dialogue skills is so important. If a person feels comfortable in themselves and authentically connected to themselves, then they can go out and have an authentic dialogue with somebody else with curiosity and openness, right? But if we're coming with, I have a preconceived opinion that I just want to shut you down with, then the conversation will not go anywhere. So we have to teach that to our students, and we have to make them comfortable, and then they can go, and then we can find ways, we must find ways to go out and build this common good.
So just in closing, this is America's 250th year. It's really, we're coming off October 7, October 8. It's going to be 2 years since these two very shocking events. Everybody should rethink their direction and strategy. and you happen to be in the field of education, you're seeing like the future of both teachers and students. So like, what's your perspective, a positive perspective? Where should we go? What should we focus on as a community, moving forward? Let's say if you had a 3-year, 5-year, 7-year, 10-year horizon, what would you do? What would be your priorities?
My priorities are in education. That's what I know best. And since October 7th, I've felt like we need to all go to our wheelhouse and make that stronger. And when I look around at education, there's obviously been a massive failure in a lot of ways, right? It's not just October 7th and October 8th, but it's also the social media and the fact that kids are so anxious and the many needs that students have, and now AI. So there's this whole plethora of problems that we have in education, not just in Jewish education, but really in general education. So my goal in the next 3 to 5 years is how do we make that better? For me and for Rabbi Sachs, it comes down to teachers, right? We need to make the profession something that people want to do, something that are very talented, creative, motivated young people want to join, a field that they want to join. And we can start, that is one area where I think we can make a lot of impact over the next few years.
All right, so let's say we bring the talent. What do you do different? The talent is in the room. What does it look different?
I think that we need to, my area now is student-centered learning. And so what we do is we say, how are we seeing the students? How do we get students who know stuff? Because I'm not saying don't know stuff. I'm not saying look it up on AI and then come to me in class. No, but how do we get students who do feel authentically, who know themselves, who can regulate themselves, who know their strengths and weaknesses, who have a growth mindset, right? Who feel comfortable failing, who want to build things together, who are entrepreneurial and creative and innovative. And that's what we do at Kadima. And we do it through not just general education, but through Jewish education. So I think that requires a mind shift in the field, which is starting to happen because there's a pain point here. The kids are not okay. So how do we shift education to meet those complicated needs?
And the whole growth mindset element here that is ingrained in Judaism, the introspection, the self-doubt, the learning, the permanent learning, is absolutely essential in a world where the pace of change is accelerating. Because as the pace of change is accelerating, there's more and more disruptions, which means that you have to unlearn and learn all the time, right? This everlasting process of questioning, learning, unlearning, reinventing yourself. In the job market, people used to have a career for 30 years, 25
Right.
years. Now it's changing all the time. So I think it's just crucially important. And this is something that that Judaism brings to the table almost naturally.
I love that you said that because it brings it right back to Rosh HaShanah where, yes, what are we doing differently this time, right? We have an opportunity. So how do we shed? It's really hard to shed old habits. We know that. But at the same time, when we come to Rosh Hashanah, we look at some of the sins that maybe we conquered this past year, right? There are things we got better at. And we look at others and we say, not there yet. I've got to unlearn some stuff and relearn. So you're right. We're constantly doing that. And we have to feel you have to be comfortable being vulnerable in order to do that, right? Rachel Goldberg-Poland was on Dancing Or, and she said, nobody will know if you didn't actually repent. It's something that's in your heart, right? So nobody will know if you didn't do it properly, but and you know what you're bringing into the world. And I think now is an opportunity for us to recognize, yes, there are many problems, but there's always the potential, and that's what Rosh Hashanah shows us.
I know I said just a couple of minutes ago we're going to close, but maybe we have a couple more minutes because I think that what you said is just profound in the following sense. We have people that came back from captivity after hundreds of days. And they were there in the tunnels. And probably they had all these existential thoughts. And now they're coming back and they can re-begin their life. And I think they would be a fascinating group of what do you do different? Right? You were thrown there, not knowing whether you're ever going to come out. And now you're out. What are you doing different? How do you live? I'm just thinking about it. It's just, and this is Rosh Hashanah. This is like their time.
Right.
And
right.
Wow. So last thing I want to ask you is one of the themes that came up when we first met was the whole idea of the civilizational story of Judaism, which is sort of being put up in the context of the Holocaust, the legacy of the Holocaust. So American Jewry, to a very large, significant degree, was shaped by the story of the Holocaust.
Yes.
Holocaust studies, Holocaust remembrance, Holocaust memorial, etc. But the Holocaust survivors are dying and disappearing. And also a lot of people say that, it's not an inspiring story to come to college and say, and hey, by the way, speak about the Holocaust. Meanwhile, there is this civilizational story that we've been talking about here over and over again in many different directions, where we've made significant contributions to humanity, to society, to America. And that's a big story, right? So, and it's kind of anchored, Rosh HaShanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkoth, it's all there. Of course, there's Pesach and other holidays, but it's all there. So there is a tremendous potential in this holiday for a new narrative for world Jewry and American Jewry, right there in front of us.
Yes, and it's a much more, as you frame it, it's a very hopeful story because it's about what we've contributed and it doesn't dwell on the trauma. And look, if any people deserve a little bit of, a sense of yes, you've had trauma, for people to recognize it, and we have generational trauma, and now we're going to have generational trauma from October 7th. But again, that duality in Judaism is that what has enabled us to survive is that in every civilization, we've taken what the world has to offer and we've said, yeah, this is amazing, and we're going to just blend it with our Judaism and be Jews and also do amazing things, right? I mean, even as the war rages on in Israel, I see articles about medical breakthroughs that boggle the mind, right?
Israel now is the leading country in the world in dealing with trauma, physical and mental, for sure. For
sure. But the breakthrough in spinal surgery, right? It boggles the mind, right? Chespander, the comedian, he's like, yeah, on one hand, we're dealing with anti-Semitism. On the other hand, we're dealing with cancer. If only you'd stop with the anti-Semitism, imagine what we could do. There's a tremendous hopeful story in our history, and you're right. There's an opportunity to share it with the world. I mean, I've always, even before Rabbi Sachs, one of the most compelling parts of Judaism for me was the teachers who taught me that the reason the Torah starts not with Exodus, with Shemot, and with Bereshit is because we are part of the story of humankind. That God is the God of humankind, and our story starts with humankind, right? We may have, as you said, and that's echoed, right, in Rosh HaShanah to Sukkot. We may have that communal celebration, the Simchat Torah, the Simchat Beit HaShoeva, but we are part of the world. We should never forget that and not retreat from that. It's a part of our story that we should be proud of.
Tikvah, thank you very much.
Thank
you.
It's
really a pleasure to have you.
Shana Tova, Fatima
Tova.
As well to you, Gidi.
And
really. Thank you.
I'm sure we'll speak again.
Please, God. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova. Friends, if you made it to this point, you can appreciate, like I do, how Rabbi Sachs connects the experience of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur with a growth mindset and the transformative power of these holidays. Chag Sameach, Chatima Tova, and Shana Tova. Thank you for listening.